Tape 1. Hello. Welcome. Come on in and have a seat. Float around. Do as you please. I'm about to tell you a story. The name of this book is called Ground Zero. Heaven or Hell, depending on which side of the street you happen to be standing on, as we all know. In the beginning, so they say, there was the Word. Our prayer, our primary, our postulate, our creation, our treat, wishful thinking, and probably 100 other symbols for I want this. Now, how does this tie into the materialist, the all is science crowd? Well, they have a beginning too, of course. Their beginning is the Big Bang. Well, what exactly was the Big Bang? Was the Big Bang another Earth that went bang? Possible. Science has no clue to that. I mean, what if there was only one planet at one time? Like, for instance, there was only one landmass on Earth. And what if that one planet, long time ago, had a thermal hydrogen nuclear war, and that was the Big Bang, 1,000 hydrogen bombs going all off at the same exact second? See, we really don't know. Science doesn't know. I mean, there are more unanswered questions in the science field than there are in the God field. And of course, I'm not an expert in neither field. I personally am just someone who likes riding the waves. You know, in the Bible and in many other great writings, the Bible, by the way, children, just means books of books. They had to come up with a word that meant more than one book. Like if you had 10 chapters in a book, well, back in the olden days, you may have 10 chapters in a book. So what do you do if all 10 books are on the same subject? Well, they didn't have the word encyclopedia, so they came up with the word Bible, which just means book of books. And please, the reason mankind is where mankind is today, our womankind, is because we didn't do our homework. It's that plain and simple. We believed without reservation. We took it as 100% gospel. You know, when somebody said charge, we charged. When somebody said annihilate, we annihilated. When somebody said, who cares about the water? We smoked the cigarettes. That is one of the biggest problems that there is with mankind. Not with the thinking Harvard person, not with the Yale brat, or the Stanford I know it all kid, or the Oxford child, or the lip sync university grad, or the Berlin grad, or all these children that are lucky enough to go to some of the finest schools in the world. No, I'm referring to us sheep. The ones who we're lucky if we can keep our head up in the 8th grade. We're lucky if we can get past the 10th grade. You know, we're lucky if we even get dinner that night. These are the ones who aren't doing their homework. These are the sheep that built the pyramids. These are the sheep that stole America. These are the sheep that came down on the Roman Empire and devastated it and changed the world. These are the Genghis Khan kids. These are the Attila the Hun children. The ones that follow without no thinking. And that's either good or that is bad. You know, that's, again, your own personal choice. It's just like today. You know, we have this situation going over in a country called Iraq. We want to have a military base next to Iran. So therefore, the only thing we could do to get in there was, of course, what? Go in and totally take over Iraq, which is exactly what we did do. You know, whether we ruined their empire, whether we killed who knows how many children and women, you know, none of that matters. As all that matters is we went in, and because supposedly of one man and about 20 kingpins, one man and 20 kingpins, we went in and thousands and thousands and thousands of people died, and billions and billions and billions of dollars, you know, went into the production just because of maybe, you know, a handful of people. But the real story is, of course, we wanted a seat over there. We wanted a power in that part of the country because we had already lost our seat there. I mean, oil is the grease that greases the wheel earth today. You know, 2,000 years ago, it was something else. 4,000 years ago, it was something else. Today, I don't think anybody in any country, even countries that, you know, have nothing, don't realize that oil controls this entire world. He who controls the oil controls the world, as the old saying goes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The story I'm really about to tell you is called The 13 Who Knew. It's a little story, a dance through history of how mankind, womankind, childkind got to be where we're at today. Why is there 200,000 nuclear bombs sitting in warehouses? Why are there trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt to pay for them bombs still owed by the sheep? That's what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about why are we in the predicament the way we are right now today? Why must the sheep lay down beside the tiger, the lion? Of course, is that the Lion of Judah? Or is that the Lion of Siberia? Or is that the lion, the king of the beast himself, of Africa? I have to go back and remember Genesis. There was a guy by the name of Moses, which many claims he wrote the book of Genesis. And I've got about as much proof as they've got that he did or he didn't. But Moses was a pretty smart old dude, or whoever did write this stuff down. Now we all know that in Moses' day, which was basically about maybe 3,500 years ago, give or take a century or two, did not have written language. They did not have written language like what we have today, to where everybody knows that word apple, everybody knows that word means apple. You know, in Moses' day, they had what was called symbol language, or cuneiform is what they called it, or hieroglyphics. You know, excuse my hillbilly pronunciation there, but they were pictures. Every picture tells a story. Was basically the, and if you didn't know what the story was behind the picture, no matter how long you stood there and looked at the rock, I'm talking about the everyday sheep who didn't know nothing except to be a good slave. In them days, you couldn't figure it out. It's like our dollar bill. You know, there's a picture of the eye on top of the dollar bill. 99% of the kids don't know what that means. You know, that's a symbol language. That's how Moses spoke. That's how they spoke, or that's how they wrote back in them days. That's how the ancient folks in India, that's how they wrote. They didn't have a letter for letter written language, I don't believe, until somewhere around the 600 BC. So everything was in symbols, and you had to be able to identify and tell what the symbol meant. Now, like for instance, again, if I showed you an apple symbol, just had an apple, picture of an apple hanging in the air, you know, today we could say, does that mean the computer boy? Does that mean a golden delicious? Does that mean a red apple? What does that mean? You know, because now we, of course, you know, who knows how many different definitions there are for the word apple. So we're almost back into the same game to a certain degree. You have to become a scientist. I mean, words are a very funny thing. I mean, it's just like, for instance, the word gay. I'm going to have a gay old time tonight. Well, this being 2005, most people would think that I'm referring to, of course, a homosexual experience. But if this was 1920, I would be talking about going out and partying. I would be talking about snorting some coke. I'd be talking about dancing all night long. I'd be talking about some moonshine. I'd be talking about girls and women. That's what I'd be talking about. A total in 100 years, that word has flipped 100%. Many words that has happened. Now, I don't like to bring up the God word too often, but most people don't even know where the God word actually came from. They think that, that it's always been around. There's always been a God. There's always been a word, G-O-D, God, this symbol of some deity that created the whole universes of universes and the spiritual worlds and whatever all that means to you. It could mean, 50,000 encyclopedias, just one word. But the truth of the matter is, up until 5,000 years ago, there was no such word, meaning deleting the word or symbol God. God was a word that meant he was good. He was at the top of the heap. He was the best of the best, the cream of the crop. Pharaoh was one of the first personages, as they call it, that was labeled a man god. Pharaoh. In other words, Phay was the God soul part, and he rode the boat, which the boat, of course, is the physical body. Jesus referred to it as the tent or the basket. Don't put your light under a basket. The light, of course, being the soul part of you, and the basket, of course, being you, the physical body. There's been many stories of this particular deal. But Pharaoh, that's what that meant, because people back in them days were total hypnotized, 100% practically, to the fact that whatever this God personage or any of his people down the road said, that there was absolutely no arguing, no thinking. I mean, total robotic, no thinking. I mean, like working in a giant factory to where everybody knows their one little move, and that little move, even if you got 10,000 people in the assembly line, each little move at the end of the deal, back in the good old days, you had a car. And everybody knew that if they did their one little thing, without arguing, without hesitation, without causing a scene, that at the end of the day, they could go out in the parking lot, and sure enough, there'd be a brand spanking new car sitting there that wasn't there this morning. Well, that was basically pretty much what it was back in them days. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't no big, giant God personage out there, that there isn't no mega soul, there isn't no mega being, but I mean, folks, you'd have to have an IQ much, much greater than Stephen Hawking's and Dr. Einstein and Fishburne and 100 others all combined together to be able to even come close to the fingernail of someone that could actually be that big. I mean, a super great pianist, has one IQ when it comes to that piano playing, and a beginner has no idea of being able to say or duplicate what this person's even coming close to thinking. I mean, we have to get within reason. I mean, that's been one of the downfalls of sheephood, is the fact that us children have not used our own logical brain. We have become total robots. We are robots. We have always been robots. I mean, since the beginning, if you look at all the old history, you'll see that it's full of robots. Robots, robots, robots. Doing exactly precisely, you take this piece of bread, you crumble it up, and you do it this way, and you dance 3 times backwards, and you say Hala Baba, and boom, everything's okay. That is a robot, any way that you look at it. And again, that's not right or wrong. I'm not into right or wrong, because the only thing that is wrong is if it hurts people. If it's wrong, it hurts women and children. If it hurts, it maims. This is wrong. If it makes people starve, we all know what wrong is. I mean, the big guy in his limousine driving by and splashing the poor homeless people on the street corner saying, well, that's their karma. We all know what's going on. We don't take no Dr. Einstein to figure out what's really happening on that deal. You know, I was once with a guy who that was his biggest thing. He liked driving around and seeing the homeless people. Look at them, mug them, look at them, blah, blah, and just to make himself feel better. That was pretty much all it amounted to. Well, they've got some shitty karma, boy. Look at that guy. He's in a wheelchair, boy. Well, who the fuck fuck, and they have all this, preconceived ideas about karma and all this stuff, which, again, may be right or wrong. But if you're sitting around in a limousine and you're judging all these people of down and out and blah, 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 and then you're not even looking at that it was because it was your law that was passed that caused the floodgates to go up somewhere and, 10,000 acres to be chopped down and all the wheat fields to be gone bye, so somebody could put in a giant hydrogen, nuclear plant. And that's why all these people can't work, and that's why all these people 100 years later are living like this. And then, that's, come on, we have to, follow the donkey back to the carrot. But I'm getting away with myself. What I'm really about to tell you, again, this is all just ad-lib fill-in, I would call it. Getting back to Genesis. What happened after the Big Bang? What really happened? I mean, why would God need 7 days to do anything, first off? If you're God, you're God. There is no time. I mean, pretty much in a scientific point of view, if there is no night and there is no day, that means there was no time in what we label as time. So that means there was no days. Was that solar days? Scientists do have a lot of interesting questions. To just nub them off and say, well, they're a psychologist. That's that answers the whole story. Or they're a Mooney. Well, there you go. Or they're a they're a Scientologist. Or they're a Catholic, whatever, and just label it that's it. That's the answer to everything. It's not. Not if you star children, which is who these tapes are made for, by the way. Not if you star children plan on going out and looking out in the sky and seeing a trillion billion stars out there just waiting for you. I mean, just waiting for you. I mean, right now, if there was 10 billion children on planet Earth, that still, if every one of you had your own starship, that still would only be one little corner of the galaxies out there that would be filled up. If every one of you had your own star, 10 billion of them, that still would be nothing. It would absolutely be nothing. Think of that. That's my goal. My goal is that every child today, someday, can have their own starship and their own star. The heck with groveling over a little piece of land over in Jerusalem, or groveling over a little piece of land in Africa, or a little reservation out in Arizona. Let's get out there. There's trillions and billions and zillions of planets out there. Who is holding us in the tar pit? Who is holding us in the mud? Why do they want to hold us in the mud? Well, of course, a third grader's already got that figured out. It's because we make good taxpayers, we make good tithers, and we make good slaves. It's that simple. Nobody wants to open up, the gates of their reservations and let all their free workers out. It's like I read once about, Himmler. They asked him where did he get the idea for his concentration camps. And he said, well, America. So, I mean, you have to follow, as the old boy says, or as the IRS guy told me one time, he says, Lon, we follow the money trail. That's all. We follow the money trail. The money trail never lies. Well, you star children, that's what you've got to do. You've got to follow the money trail. It's easy for a lawyer to get up there and say, well, this and that and that and that, and we passed this law and this and that, and then find out, 50 years later that, his clan, benefited, $50 million from him getting that law passed. In the old days, that's how long it would take. We all know who all got rich over the Vietnam scam. It took, how many years for people to figure that all out. We know that now. This Iraq thing will take maybe 5 years for people to really figure out when it's over what actually happened, where the chips really fell and who really reaped the money. That's always the bottom line. I mean, these politicians and people that stand up and say, We care about these poor slobs over there. Yeah, right. That's why they're driving down the street in their limousines, splashing homeless people in their own country because they care so much. You star children, and when I refer to star children, I'm referring to no sex and no race. That is the definition of a star child. No sex and no race. That don't mean that you don't have a sex, and that don't mean you don't have a race or a clan or a background. I'm referring to my definition. A star child is someone who has the stars on their mind. They want their generation of children under them to be free from this infested inferno that we call planet Earth, which is, of course, the hell side. Is there a heaven side to Earth? Why, absolutely. You know, in the metaphysical world, back in 1880 into about the 1930s, Earth was referred to as Hell 1 or Heaven 1, depending on which side of the railroad track you happen to be standing on. I mean, if your parents had it made, we'll say, and everything, and you never had to worry about food or education or health problems, care problems, all the major things that every normal person has to worry about, not worry, but is in the back of their mind, which means there's some kind of programming running daily, then you could say you are on one side of the heaven side. In other words, if you break your leg, you don't got to worry about going waiting in an emergency room and taking a day to get up there, and hopefully a doctor will know what he's doing and he'll do it right, and blah, 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 and all this stuff that goes along with going into a county hospital. If you're rich, boom, you go to the best hospital in the world. A second later, you're in there, patch up, and you're back out the door. Or, of course, in the good old days, you didn't even have to do that. Your mama made the phone call, and the doctor came to you and patch. That's how it was really done. I mean, they called that homeschooling. I believe they still have that. It's like, my children are too special. We are too unique, so we will homeschool our kids so they will know in their psychic. That's the psychic for you star children that aren't up to that point yet in your discovery of words is what they refer to as the spirit, the psyche, the mechanism that makes the whole ball work, the power source, built in their mind. If a little kid from the time he comes from the crib all the way up to 12th grade is homeschooled with the very best, the best of everything else, he can't but have in his psyche that he's special. I mean, come on, any of these people that prance around in their $800 suits that say, no, I never, not me, oh no, I was normal even though I had, the golden spoon. It's built into the psychic. No more than if Charlie Manson was your dad and he brought you up and, him and some witch of a woman was your mom, and they were your mom and dad and brought you up to be 12 years old, 14, 16 years old. Any psychologist or psychiatrist will tell you, whoo, we got to watch that one. They don't ever get into the other side. It's always let's get into the Charlie Manson side. But that old story or that old shoe fits both feet. But I'm getting off the track. I'm here to tell you about what Moses said. Oh, Moses, Moses, Moses. Now there was a dude. Moses said, there are gods among us. Who was he referring to? I mean, was he referring to the almighty of the mighty of the mighty, Or was he referring to gods that walked on earth? Or was he referring to invisible gods that actually was on earth, but also were spiritual? Some say he was referring to angels, depending on which church you come from. Everybody's, of course, got their own definitions. But the bottom line is he said there are gods among us. Okay? Now, again, as I've said, in Moses' day, Pharaoh was God. And you could literally have your head chopped off faster than slapping Adolf Hitler in the face if you told Pharaoh he was not God. I mean, you weren't even allowed to look at him if you was a sheep. Even if you was of the royal clan, I mean, you didn't just go up and sit on his lap. I mean, he was God, plain and simple. And, you don't go up to God and tell him he ain't God. I mean, there's some churches that if you went up to them and told them, well, I decided, boys, I don't want to be part of your organization anymore. I think you guys are full of shit. Why, you might as well have taken, Elvis Presley out and crucified him. or some great deity, of theirs, and put him on the bonfire. You just don't do that. Pharaoh was God. Now, I'm not talking about God, the God that later someone coined the idea of a great invisible God ahead of all the other gods. See, to understand this, you have to understand to a certain degree the Hindu religion, which of course has a mountain of gods. They have a god for everything under the sun. Even the sun's a god. And then there's the head god, and the god of the head god, and then there's the god that's in charge of all the gods. You know, in my opinion, it means, like, for instance, you have, say, your ace pilots. You have the guy who's the number one ace. He is, and you're coming up now. You're in the squad. You made it. You're in the God squad. And so who would you listen to? Well, you couldn't most likely just go up to the number one ace pilot. The guy that knocked out 25 of Hitler's planes. Just last week. You would go to maybe a guy 10 echelons down the chain from him and talk to him, and then slowly work your way up. I mean, it's like a rope, or it's like a string. You're always on one end of the string, no matter which way that you look at it, and everything else in time is on the other end of the string. And there could be knots in this string. These knots could be very hard times. These knots could be very good times. These knots could be labeled as gods. Oh wow, I'm finally going to meet. I remember back when with me, speaking of my own personal self, I'm gonna actually get to meet Elvis Presley. Wow, my Jimi Hendrix. Oh, the Beach Boys. Oh, and all this stuff. Being a musician, these things, I thought they were really something. These guys were, and they were. They did it. They made it. They come through it, and they actually performed and did it and come out of the tar pit, and were symbols for all. Maybe in the science field, it could have been Professor Stephen Hawking, or it could have been to actually meet Albert Einstein and have a cup of tea with the man, and take a light test with him. Whatever your field is, you know what this is. These could be considered knots on the end of the string. But at the other end of the string, no matter what it is, there's still a mystery at the other end of the string. There is never no ending. Even if you're the greatest professor in the world and you know everything under the sun and you're 10 times smarter than Professor Hawkins, there's still more. There's still more. And of course, any professor worth his oats will tell you that. We're at the baby steps. We're at first grade when it really comes to physical knowledge. We're really at first grade, and science needs to say that. To totally mislead, and I'm referring to, you got to remember, folks, children, there is positive scientists and there's negative scientists. In every field, we have this. And there are neutrals. It's like, for instance, every person in Germany was not out to kill the Jews. Every person in Germany was not out to annihilate the British. The British were their cousins. They weren't out to annihilate the British. Every person, there's good doctors and there's bad doctors. Freud and Hyde, so to speak. Or excuse me, I guess Freud was Hyde. Oh, that's a joke. There's scientists that created all these hydrogen bombs and all these chemical gases and all this stuff that has left, like I said, the American public and the Russian public and the Chinese public and trillions and billions and zillions and who knows how much actual debt that you children have to pay for all these past regimes. Them are bad scientists. Them scientists were not good for planet Earth. Them scientists were not good for you sheep. If they took all that money that they spent on all them bombs and everything else, we would have done cured cancer. We would have done cured about every sickness on the planet. We would have done cured, the air pollution problem. We would have done cured everything if they would have used all them trillions and billions and zillions of dollars instead of stuffing it in their own back pocket, if they would have used that money for the good. So you got your bad scientists, and you got your good scientists. Let's face it, the guy that cured polio, the guy, there's trillions of good scientists out there, I'm sure. I'm personally not educated, so I can't really quote too many of them, but, I mean, the guy who come up with, for instance, the flu virus, or all this stuff, there's tons and tons and tons, of course, as we all know, of good, positive scientists. So on every field in religion, there's good religion, there's bad religion. Inside a religion, there's there's fathers, priests that are good priests, and have been good priests for 50 years, and then there's fathers and priests that are good priests that have molested 300 little kids, both going in this exact same church in the exact same building, So there's a Jim Jones, out there, there's a Charlie Manson out there waiting on the corner, and the same as there's the Charlie Manson out there waiting on the corner, there's also, the person who saves the day waiting on the corner, the hero of Baghdad. So anyway, let's get back to these three angels. And then later I'll tell you how we got to where we're at today to a certain degree. And again, I'm no scholar, I'm no expert, I'm certainly no doctor, and I'm no teacher. I'm just a guy that's been living on the road for a long time. Who are these three angels? Again, Lucifer, Michael, and Gabriel. Michael, who started the Christian church supposedly, and Gabriel, who gave the trumpet to Muhammad. I mean, of course, there's some who, of course, will tell you that Lucifer was, of course, Vishnu or Shiva and blah blah blah, and try to, of course, and put it in that frame. You've always got somebody who wants to take their frame and say we got the way, and of course the bad guy relates to that other organization. You have that, as I said, in every organization. I mean, it's like I said about rich people. If you're homeschooled and you live in a palace, in a mansion, and you're homeschooled from the time you're a little baby all the way up till you're 21, fed with a silver spoon and told how great you are, and you are this, in your psyche, in your energy force field, you obviously believe that. Why? Because everywhere you look around, everybody's telling you that. Well, imagine if your dad was Charlie Manson, and your mom was, some witch, and they were your mom and dad, and they brought you up to tell you blah 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 blah. Well, of course your psychic would be 100% different. And again, your whole belief mechanism would be that. I mean, that's common sense. I mean, every great religious story, whether it be Buddha and his divine birth, whether it be Krishna and his divine birth, or whether it be Jesus and his divine birth, whether it be Apollo and his divine birth, all of them have, because that is very important. That is the root, the cornerstone of everything. If you're in a room and everybody from the moment the woman finds out, say that you decide, say you take a man and a female and you put them in a house, and you tell them, now we want you to procreate, and from the day that they're in there, it's constantly playing on, this baby's going to be special, this is going to be a special baby, this is going to be a great baby, you people are the perfect specimens, we've chose you out of all the people in the world of billions of people, we've brought you two together because you two are going to have the perfect baby, the greatest baby in the world, and the genealogist did all the genes and found out you guys are just, you're the cream of the crop. I mean, you're right back to the very beginning. Okay, and this stuff kept playing day and day, and the man and the wife, they procreate, and next thing you know, a week later, the doctor say, hey, we did it, and that baby is gone, and they just, from day after day, says, now look, little girl, this baby you're having is going to be, he's going to be the world savior, she's going to be the world savior, it's going to be the world savior, it's the greatest baby because we brought the two, and for 9 months, this it went on and on and on to where, I mean, every second, I mean, from the time they were drinking their coffee in the morning to the time they were watching Johnny Carson at night, all they got was, man, you guys are the greatest, you're the greatest, and this baby is going to be like no other baby under the sun. Well, at the end of 9 months, when the little baby comes, the little tyke comes, then boom, the most important, famous people in the world, to you guys, to you, in your world. Maybe that may be, for me, it could have been like say, an Elvis Presley, a Jimi Hendrix, a John Lennon, John Wayne, Jack Nicholson, they come to my house and say, man, man, and shake my hand and bow down to me and give me presents and everything else and say, man, you're a baby, and then on the vice versa, it may be on the mom's side, it could be, Lady Diana comes to you, and Mother Teresa herself makes the ride over and comes to you and bows down to you and says, in other words, you get the concept. All the greatest, most important people in the world come to you, and of course you got your little sideline if you got your psychologist, and he sends a couple bad boys over and say, nah, it's really, we think that this, experiment ain't that hot and blah, 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 blah. We should go ahead and abort. So you got that side of, the old, let's get the baby Moses, let's get the baby Jesus, let's get the baby Krishna. The only baby that people didn't try to get was Buddha. All the other stories all have the same story. You got the arch villain, the head guy who's scared of losing all of his material wealth out to get you. So, but anyway, what kind of baby do you think you're going to have? What kind of baby? Well, any person who met that baby or talked to that baby, and that baby from his own universe, looking out from his own eyes, based on everything that's been programmed in his programming, and everything he'd been told, and everything he'd been showed, what else could he not think but that he's God? Which meant he would have holy thoughts, he would have every thoughts, he would have total thinking of whatever was already programmed into him, all combined together, which would be constantly do good to people, people are that, everything you told him, he would reflect every bit of that, whatever the divine teaching was. Back in the good old days over in India, I'm talking about 3,500 years ago, what you would do is your parents would come in, and when you were like about a 4 or 5-year-old boy, they would take you to the guru, which means teacher. Don't get excited there. It only means teacher. They would take you to the teacher, and they would leave you there. You might stay there till you're 12 years old. You might never leave. You might stay with that guru your whole entire life. But on an average, you might stay there from the time you're 5 years old to you're 12 years old, to where you're physically able to start doing physical work to help mom and dad, if you're of that class or that clan. And the guru would tell you all these things, and he would insert into you all the good positive programmings. He would, that's, the song of love, that's what the word, that's what the Gita, which is their Bible, it's called the Song of Love, which basically is what it means, is the teacher passes on all the good positive vibrations into the student. Passes it on, so when the student, again, becomes in adulthood, then he reflects all this out in his community, and he does good. It was a well-workable system. Again, it'd be like a computer. You got a computer, it's a raw computer, it don't have any data, no knowledge whatsoever, except just the basic get up, use the bathroom computer. Okay, now you come in and you feed it all these positive programmings, help all the other programmings, work together, work as a team, we're all in it together, all these good positive things, each one of these programmings. But then somebody comes in and inserts a spam here and there, worm virus, and your computer totally crashes and goes back to the very beginning again. You got all kinds of, well, that's you. That is us. I mean, computers was based on our own mechanisms. That's how they come up with the idea of the computers, if you read these computer science books. They based on it, that's how our mind works, they call it a rope memory. One rope, again, like the string. Like I said, you crawl down the string, and there's that box, and you crawl down the string a little more, there's that box, you crawl down the string, and then there's pieces of string that go off from one side off to the left, and these are the paths that Jesus talked about when you get on the wrong path. You go down that path, you may be down that path for, who knows how many years, and find out, holy smokes, you get to the end of it, and you see there ain't nothing but a big fall, so now you have to crawl your way all the way back to the middle road again, and back on the, that was Buddha's whole teaching, was, the middle path, stay on the main path, stay on the piece of string that's the total string going exactly, to where you want to go. Now, whether you want to label that the Godhead or the big kahuna or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter, only you know that. My only concern is stars. Star children. My only concern is getting out of the mud factory and into the heavens, into the stars. Imagine that, being on an actual star cruiser. An actual ship that can actually cruise through the stars and go from here to Venus and Mars and on out and all that stuff. Imagine that. That just, and have your whole, you can have everything you have on Earth can be on a starship. It could be like the Titanic, except up in the air. This is a possibility. This is a reality, folks. We could actually do this. Instead of spending zillions and trillions and billions and who knows how much money and time and energy and focus on building H-bombs and armies and, just so we can go steal people's oil and steal people's land and keep people poor slaves. That's the old way. That's the snake way. That's Lucifer's way. That is Lucifer's way. Lucifer, like I said, does not want a nuclear war. I mean, that's the last thing on. But that ain't saying he ain't pushing, to spend every dollar and get every. That's his game. It's like there's two vibrations. There's one vibration of frustration, we'll say, and greed, and all the stuff that goes with that vibration. If you label that one vibration, and then if you label the other vibration going the other way as positive, caring, loving, sharing, let's get along, let's be it's two totally different vibrations. That's what you got. Satan gets off on one side, Michael gets off on the other, and Gabriel gets off on the same type of a vibration. The reason God created the emperor of the entire universe, the reason he created these different angels is so they could each have different abilities. I mean, nobody ever says, the God has to take responsibility for what he did or is doing. You never hear any preachers ever say anything, well, where's God's responsibility in all this? Where's God's responsibility in supposedly making snake? Where's God's responsibility in making the tree in the first place? I mean, what kind of idiot, would take and put a bowl full of cocaine out on a table and take, a couple little 10-year-old kids and put them sit at the table and say, now look, don't touch this stuff. This is strictly cosmetic here. Don't touch it. I mean, only an insane idiot would do something like that. And I'm not saying God's an insane idiot. I'm saying there's a bigger plan, of course, to that. I'm just saying if you look at it just from the way some people want you to think. I mean, who made Snake? Who programmed Snake? Who has to take responsibility for Snake? I mean, if you have a little kid and you abuse that little kid and turn him into a little monster or a little hellion on wheels, and he goes out and does a bunch of naughty little things, I guarantee you, somebody's going to come back and sue you. The court's going to come back and say, hey, your kid, did all this vandalism. You got to take responsibility for him. You got to pay all this stuff. People actually have insurance for that now. If their kids get out of control and cause a bunch of havoc to the next door neighbor, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? If your kid, goes down and does, some kind of larceny at a giant store and everything, that store's going to sue you. That store's going to make you pay for it. They're not going to pay for it. And at some things, they're going to come and take you to jail. They're going to take you right along with your kid to jail. So you have to be responsible. We have to be responsible. Again, even if you're just driving down the street and you stop at the bank and your kids go in and rob the bank and come out and jump in the back seat and you guys drive away, and 3 hours later the SWAT team surrounds your house, guess what? You're going to jail. Yeah, you're going to jail even if you're the, a Girl Scout leader. You're going to jail because that's how the law's set up. So where's God's responsibility in all this stuff? Well, it's just a much, much bigger plan, folks. It's just a much, much bigger plan. And I'm not trying to say that I know what the plan is. I'm not trying to say I know any of that stuff. It's all I'm trying to say is that there has to be a bigger reason for this. Again, mankind would not be right where womankind is if we hadn't had World War II. And that's a horrible thing to say for all the millions, 50 million people that died, all them, H-bomb charred babies over there in Japan. That's hard to say, but that's the truth. And if we hadn't had World War I, we wouldn't be here today either, because World War I was the setting stage for World War II. And if we hadn't had the wars of over in Europe in 1880s of the Germans and the German Empire and all this stuff and all their struggles of coming out of the Holy Roman Empire days and all that stuff, we wouldn't have had World War I, we wouldn't have had World War II, and we wouldn't have, World War III, which is not an actual physical war. There are many people on the computer now have figured that out. It's not a physical war. World War III is not a physical war. World War III is a war of the minds, a war of the, of the thought process. War of the words. If you take like the Church of Scientology and you follow them, I mean, they'll probably be suing me just because I used their name. It is a trademark name, but I'm using it as an IE on the end. Remember that now. But I mean, the war of the of words, the computer war. That's going to be the big war. I mean, right now today on a computer in the United States, practically everybody in the United States is listed on there, and anybody can find out who the heck anybody is, where they live, how much money they make, who their insurance agent is, and everything else under the sun. It's all right. There are actual companies that are making millions of dollars by putting all this information on. Well, eventually you're going to be able to find out, well, that lawyer Sam, here's all his cases that he did, and here's all the child molesters he got off, because that's his specialty, and here's how much money he's made, and here's his big villa in the Bahamas, and here's his big villa down in South America, and he's really reaping a pretty good life by getting all these scum guys off of on technicalities, or or murderers or whatever. All that stuff's going to be on the internet pretty soon. The people, the Hensleys, the Marthas, the Enrons, all them people. It's not just going to be, oh well, wow, we heard this guy ripped off, $400 million. Well, one of these days it's going to be, where is the $400 million? Who's got it? Which one of his grandkids are living the good life off of all that money? Where does he live at? Where's his Mercedes Benz parked at? Where's he the big guy at Martha's Vineyards? Where's his party place? One of these days, all this stuff will be on the internet. Absolutely everything. You won't be able to tip your hat without it being on. Yeah, I seen Lon, yesterday, and he tipped his hat to an engine lady, of all things. Folks, we got an interesting game here. Very, very, very interesting game. So, getting back to the three angels, or the three, I refer to it as the three main churches. And that's not to leave the Hindus out, and that's not to leave the Buddhas out. I'm referring to in the course Melchizedek tree. Most people don't even know who Melchizedek is, but Melchizedek is the father of the Jewish religion. He's the father of the Zotar religion. He's the father of all the different types of Christian religions. He's the father of Abraham's religion. In other words, he is the true cornerstone. He is the cornerstone of all these religions. He is the vine. Now, who he is, there's very little information on this particular chap. Some say that he was Michael. Okay? Well, again, he, according to the good book, was the high priest of Salem, which of course was Jerusalem, the old name for Jerusalem back when the Babylonians or whoever it was ruling the day. The Persians, whoever it was ruling the day. Them people changed their leaders over there as fast as Michael Jackson changes his addresses, I think. But that's a joke, of course, now. Anyway, they had many kingdoms come and go over in that area. But this guy lived back in supposedly Abraham's day, which I believe was around 4,000 years ago, which would have been in the Baghdad heyday of the Aryans. Well, anyway, he was the high priest. In other words, he was the king. See, you got to remember, high priest back then meant king. It says that right in the Bible. He was the king and the high priest. In other words, he was in charge of all the police, of the army, of doing all the military deal, and he was in charge of all the clergy. In other words, of all the God things. That's what that means. King, priest. That's what David was. A king, priest. That's what the word Messiah means. It means king, priest. Both rolled up into one. That's what that word actually means. Solomon, the reason that he built the temple and was head was because he was the king, priest. He was head of the whole, this was what King Henry, that was his whole claim to fame, was he wanted to be the king priest, which he did become. He became the king of England, in charge of all the armies and everything under the sun there, and all the courts and everything else, and he became the head priest, the head of the church. That's what that means. It means king priest. That's what the word Messiah means. The word Christ, it means he's been anointed, he's been chosen, he's been picked. Now all these groups all have their holy man on the side, of the guy who's the outcast, the shaman, the guy who lives up in the hills, the prophet, coming in and saying, well, now look, the Lord told me, David, you better, walk this way because blah, 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 blah. All these groups, even in India, in some of the older religions like that, religions of that time, all had the same thing. These holy people out in the woods that only lived, strictly to try to gain that higher consciousness. It'd be like, being, if you class computers in a A, B, C, D form, you'd say, A would be the sheep, B would be the middle class, C would be C would be the upper class, the blah blah blah, and D would be the totally elite, the geek, the wizard of the computers, and then you still got, of course, offshoots of your spammers and your Merlins. Yeah, everything kind of you can form it into a computer type of operation in your mind. But that's King Melchizedek. Again, supposedly some say he was Michael. There's an interesting book called the Urantia, which explains every bit of this in such great detail that I can't even move a page on it. There's so much information in there about all this stuff, written back in '53. But so that's who this Melchizedek guy was, and he created all these things, and all the angels and everything else all stems from his particular religion. Now, again, I mentioned the name Zolotar. Zolotar, of course, was still is today, a head guy of a religious system that was started. Some say that he was started around 600 BC. Some say that he was around 1600 BC. There's even some say that he was actually the same person that was Melchizedek, and some say that him and Melchizedek was of the same order. There's a lot of information about who this particular guy was, and again, he was over there in the Mesopotamian area when he actually lived. But he basically is the guy who coined the idea there's a good God and there's a bad God, and then there's the in-between. He was one of the first to come up with that particular theory over in that part, in the Christian or in the Judaic or the Muslim way of thinking. He was the guy that came up with it in that area. Of course, we all know in Hinduism that it was in Hinduism. Also 1500 BC, 2500 BC. Because Shiva and Kali, were the same thing. So it's been around a good long time. So again, there's always the two angels, and then there's the third. So see, there's supposedly Gabriel and Lucifer and Michael. Now some say Lucifer, of course, is the negative, Gabriel is the positive, and Michael is the in-between. And again, who knows? Unless they pop into the room and say, this is it, and give you some fruit. Always be a fruit doctor, kids. No matter what. I mean, if you're dumber than a hill of beans, always be a fruit doctor. That is, there's no way around being a fruit doctor. Every religion agrees on that. Be a fruit doctor. I mean, what is a fruit doctor? A fruit doctor says, is the kid that I come up and I say, look, man, I got the best oranges in the world, and you say, okay, fine, let's see them, and you look at them, you say, fine, yeah, they look pretty good, and then you go and you find people that I sold oranges to, and you say, did this guy sell you an orange? Yeah, he did. How was the orange? Oh, man, it was the best orange I ever ate in my life. Okay, that's a good fruit doctor. Okay, if I stand up and say, man, I got the best bananas in the world, I mean, every known monkey in the universe comes to me for their bananas. And I give you this and that, and for 10% down, I'm going to sell you part of my corporation, and you'll be able to sell my particular bananas over in your part of the universe, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you give me 10% down, shame on you. If you do your homework and first taste my bananas, look my bananas over, check my, banana plants, check, see how, if I got enough bananas to stock you, you become a scientist, then you go to past customers, okay, how was this good? Great bananas, fine. What about, did you ever get at a pinch? Did he ever, cheat you? Did you ever get in a bind? Did you ever this? In other words, you do your shopping. You don't just take it on a whim just because a TV commercial says, this pill is great for headaches, and the FDA says it's great for headaches. You don't just go out and rush out and buy the pill. Why? Because the pill is the apple. That's what Eve did, supposedly. Eve took the apple and didn't investigate. Eve believed the snake. Look at, the emblem of the doctor. You got a couple snakes there. That's their emblem. So, so Eve took the apple, and of course, we all know what happened from that point on, which, of course, I've got a whole book just on that particular theory. So who are these three real angels? Who are they? Who are they really? Do you honestly really know? People, do you really know who they honestly are? The whole world is manipulated around these three people. Again, from Snake, you got his whole empire of everything is material. That's his teaching. And then, of course, you've got, Gabriel and Michael, who are on the other side of the thing, is no, everything is spiritual, or everything is spiritual and physical. So, but what about the big guy? What about Mama? What about Mama? Where she come into the play at? What about Mama? What about the Earth Mama? Is that really Satan? Is the Earth Mama really Satan? These are all questions that the thinking logical kid needs to ask himself. Is the Earth Mama really Satan? Is she designed, or he designed, because some say he is most beautiful, designed to get you trapped into the physical universe? These are all interesting questions. But this is all just an introduction to the 13 Who Knew, which is the story of Xinu and Xenu, or Xylon and Trilon. These two have many different names. They are identical twins. These identical twins supposedly were born millenniums ago, long, long, long ago. Basically, as far as Earth is concerned, these identical twins go back to 36,678 years ago, is when they tapped down on planet Earth. There's a whole church organization that is built around one of these identities. There's another whole church organization that's built around the other one of these identical twins. Who are they? And who is their baby? And who is the third? Most people don't understand that God, besides having a right hand and a left hand, don't you realize he also had a daughter? Oh yes, God had a daughter. Sitting on the throne room and all this stuff, in Revelations, there's a daughter there. Who is her offspring? This is all going to be included in the teaching of the nut. And of course, I'm no teacher, but I'm the nut. So you have to be the teacher. Thank you. And by the way, when I say teacher, we all know there's three types of teachers. There's the teacher that inspires you. There's the teacher that informs you. And then there's the teacher that teaches wisdom. And the only way you get wisdom is, of course, it starts with you. There is no wisdom without you. If you ain't there putting the soup together, you're not going to be able to spell. So the ultimate reality is you are the teacher. You self-teach yourself. You look around at everything that is given to you and you decide what it means and put it in your mind, and that's how you teach yourself. So you have to be the good teacher, you have to be the wise teacher, and you have to be the smart teacher for yourself. So do you teach yourself hate things, bigotries, racism, all the words? Or do you teach yourself caring, sharing, grace, forgiveness, and all the good positive aspects? Do you drive down the street and splash the homeless people in your car and laugh and tell them it's only their karma? Or do you decide to do something about it? You'll find that in everything in life, practically, there's three meanings. It's like the good cop, the bad cop, but there's also the in-between cop. That's the one that's behind the mirror. That's the one that's out there looking and judging and watching. There's the prosecutor and the defending attorney and the judge. There's in most things, there's these three things that go about in a spear. So the question is, why, and who, and why? Why do you have to be saved? because some girl ate an apple 5,000 years ago? I mean, does any logical thinking person actually believe that? Who is the one holding everyone prisoner? Why is this particular being saying you do it my way or you don't go nowhere? Who is the Savior? Who are you going to? What is actually in heaven? Is it all violins and dancing? These are all questions that the Star Kid must ask himself while he's on the journey, upward and outward. I mean, I'm not claiming that I have any answers to anything. What I'm about to tell you is the story of a set of identical twins that had a most interesting 12 years in the beginning. Thank you. Please cue the tape up